Drink up me arties, yo-ho! Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End is the third movie in the official sort of Pirates trilogy, then you have the two extra ones. This is again directed by Gore Verbinski, who directed the previous two, and this is a really long Pirates movie. This movie is nearly 3 hours long, and I have a lot to talk about, and I don't think I'll be able to talk about it without talking about spoilers. So if you've never seen At World's End, then this review will contain spoilers. But let's get into Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. I like this film. I do think each of the Pirates movies do get worse each time. I like a lot of things in this movie, and most of the things I like about this movie come place towards the end, so I'll get to those later. But let's get with my issues with this movie first, because there are a lot of issues, and the majority of them take place in the first 2 hours of this film, which is a real drag. This movie should not be nearly 3 hours long. It doesn't need to be. It's extremely overlong. There's a lot of really dragged out moments of just people sailing on pirate ships. And yes, throughout these first 2 hours, there are some incredibly fun moments, but it just drags out in the pace. There's just really long periods of time where nothing is happening. There's also a lot of story beats that carry on from the last one. I like how it carries on the adventure from the last one. It basically takes place right after the last one, so it feels like one large, massive, epic adventure. But this one's storytelling is really off. It gets really confusing. There's a lot of really extremely strange sequences and risky sequences, which I appreciated and enjoyed, but some of them just didn't make any sense. Let's talk about Jack's introduction in this film, because of course he sort of died in the last... He didn't die, but he sort of got eaten by the Kraken thing, and then supposedly killed it, and then got locked up in Davy Jones's locker, which it never explains what it is. And we see him just on this beach with a bunch of crabs, carrying a pirate ship. What pirate ship? And he's just there, and they meet up with the crew, and it's like, what? It also doesn't really explain Barbossa's return. There's a little scene where we see, I believe it's Calypso, who is Davy Jones's, it's sort of his lover, with the reason he cut out his heart. And every time I think of Davy Jones, every time he says Calypso really seriously, I just think of him drinking the Calypso drink. Let's not think about that anymore. But seriously, it doesn't really explain Barbossa's return that much. It's like, okay, I understand that it could happen, but maybe just a little more explanation. I'm not someone that likes to be force-fed information, but here I think it was necessary when things just happen out of the blue for no apparent reason. Yes, it is a fantasy film, but I'd like some logic behind it, and sometimes this movie is just devoid of all logic, which is fine, I guess. There's a lot of really great mystical moments. I love the scene where they all have to rock the boat to turn it upside down. I love that moment. It's really, really cool, really epic. The score, Hans Zimmer's score is the best of all the Pirates movies. I've listened to this score over repeat so many times. I love the score of this film. And this movie, the first two acts, just again, they drag. It is a bore. I can't explain it either way. It really does drag. There isn't much happening. I love the opening scene, though. The opening scene gets you right into this film. It's an emotional moment, and where all those people are going to get hanged and the kids start singing. A really great moment. Even comes in later into a little bit of the storytelling. I appreciate that. I also appreciate what they do with the villains here. Davy Jones has a bit more development here, and I think Bill Nye's performance is actually pretty good. I like what they do with Will and his father, and that storyline that keeps intact. Also love what they do with Will and Elizabeth's character here, because these two characters are sort of at odds in this film. I love those two characters where they leave them off, and especially towards the ending, and that aspect of the film I thought was quite emotional. There's a great sequence towards the end of the film where they're fighting, and they don't think they're going to win, so they're like, okay, Barbossa, can you marry us? And they basically have like a wedding ceremony as they're fighting all these shark creatures. It's extremely enjoyable and fun, and what this movie does with these action sequences, what the entire Pirates franchise does, it takes your conventional sword fights and then puts a little bit of humour in there, puts a little bit of flavour in them, and it really, really works. It makes it far more entertaining, because there's things happening for the characters there that are more interesting than just all the action sequences, which are excellently directed and really, really fun. And there are some beautiful shots in this movie. The CGI looks gorgeous. It's a great looking film, and it's definitely the best visual experience out of the three. But I can't ignore the story problems and pacing issues of this film. And it all happens in the first 2 hours. There are good moments during the first 2 hours, but they just drag on far too long, and it sort of becomes irritating. Let's get in with my big positives of this movie, though, which are easily the final moments of this film. The big third act, the big battle. I love the scene where Jack and all the other Pirate Realm people are all sitting, or like the pirate leaders. It's a really great sequence, and it's really, really enjoyable. And seeing all these pirates come together to face this big army is really epic. With just millions of pirate ships. It's really fun. It acts as this big epic finale, which at some points it is, and the action sequences are there. I also love the emotional pull where Will has to, of course, take the curse of Davy Jones after killing him, and that was quite emotional. Of course, he can only now see Elizabeth every 10 years. That, of course, does come back in Salazar's Revenge, the 5th movie, but I appreciate how we can only see her every 10 years. And I love the end credit scene of this film where it shows it 10 years later, and Elizabeth's got a child, and Will comes back. It's quite emotional, actually. I actually found myself really wrapped up in those moments. And it's a ballsy way to end your movie, have the relationship split off. And I like the line he says where he said, well, I better make that day count. It's emotional. It shows that I do care about these characters, and seeing that take place, I think, was a risky way to end this film. And it still leads off for another adventure with Jack Sparrow, which I'll get into in my next video where I review Stranger Tides. But of course, he's still going on and to do his adventure, so there's still more of the story to tell. But that was the conclusion to their story, because the Will and Elizabeth storyline. And I think it works as a great finale in that way. Do we need the other 2 movies? No, but they're fun extra adventures with Jack Sparrow, and I'm happy we got them, even though they weren't that great. But At World's End has a lot of pacing problems. It has a lot of things wrong with it, for sure. There's a lot of things I really, really like in it. There's some emotional moments. But the first 2 acts drag so much, and so much confusing elements, so many plot conveniences, that it becomes annoying. The 3rd act, though, is pretty much perfect. It's what you want out of a Pirates movie. It's enjoyable. It's big, epic 3rd act. Emotional weight, enjoyable. The score's hitting up, chills. It's great. It's fun. There's a lot of moments during this 3rd act that really wow me and are really, really great. But it takes a chore to get there, personally. But I still like A World's End, and I think it's a good movie. I think it's a good finale for these characters, and then there's still more adventures in the Pirates universe that we can go on. But overall, I do like At World's End. It's easily the worst of the last 3. I wish it was paced better. I wish they really shortened the runtime down and just written a better script, because this movie was made only a year after the last one. So you can tell this one did feel a little bit rushed, not in the pacing, because it is very, very long, but you can tell a lot of story elements were just sort of slapped together. Sometimes I can look past this and just say, this is an enjoyable movie. This is entertaining. It's something I'm happily watching again, over and over again. It's very, very enjoyable. It's a good conclusion. It's a good 3-act. These first 3 films are a good 3-act trilogy of adventures. And I appreciate that. And I do like A World's End. I think it's a very cool visual experience. And it's a fun Pirates movie. And that's all it needs to be. I'm going to give Pirates of the Caribbean, At World's End, a B. I'm also going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. Guys, comment down below your opinions on At World's End if you have seen it. And of course, thanks for watching. And goodbye.